Yu Yu Hakusho is, in short terms, a brilliant cacophony. Yoshihiro Togashi's first breakout manga success is one that many look back on stupendously fondly, and for good reason. Even without the drunk goggles of nostalgia, the other popular shonen shows of that era could all but hold a candle to the masterfully crafted cast of characters orbiting around the universally likable Yusuke Urameshi. While DBZ's Goku seemed to fulfill every millennial weeb's power fantasy, Yusuke was the one that they truly wanted to become. This, alongside beautifully drawn or animated fight scenes, iconic attacks, and every single one of Botan's fits, created a series that can still be easily watched and enjoyed today. However, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Much like how other series of its time couldn't hold a candle to Yu Yu Hakusho, Yu Yu Hakusho can't to Togashi's most recent work, Hunter x Hunter. While Yu Yu Hakusho is a brilliant cacophony, Hunter x Hunter is just brilliant. Others obviously think similarly, considering the sizable score disparity on my anime list. Some may hope to explain this away by the difference in age of the shows and the resulting animation qualities, but look. Between these two on the scoreboard are Legend of the Galactic Heroes, which started in 1989, Slam Dunk, which started in 1993, and even Rocky Joe 2, which started in 1980. Sure, it's clear that modern shows have an edge, likely because of the growing tendency to just consume product and get excited for next products, but the difference of 123 spaces on Mal's rankings exists for other reasons. I assert this: Hunter x Hunter succeeds because of Yu Yu Hakusho's failures. In other words, Yoshihiro Togashi learned from his first major outing as a long-form mangaka, taking note of all places his first series failed, so that its subsequent could become one of the most well-written series of all time. Though this extends into a huge number of endless minutiae, I found three major categories that seem to be where the most progress was made. A defined yet flexible power system, a more grounded treatment of death, and an elimination of Deus Ex Machina. These are also known as the 3 Ps of bad story writing: power levels, pretending characters aren't dead, and poorly preparing the protagonist before pitting him against his opponents in a climactic battle they can't win without the looming hand of God helping them at the climax. First, the obligatory spoilers for the entirety of both shows incoming, and now, let's talk about anime. Yu Yu Hakusho's power system is hardly a system at all, really. In my first draft of the script, I tried describing the complexities of energy thoroughly yet quickly before sleeping on it and realizing it was never designed to be explained in the first place. Starting with only spirit energy in mind, Togashi went through his series adding to a loose definition as often as needed to fit a plot goal. As soon as spirit energy lost its novelty, demon energy took the stage to act as a sort of equal and opposing force inaccessible by humans. At some later point, the two began to feel limiting, and the chapter Black Saga introduced a cast of characters who had gone through the portal to Demon World and awakened demon energy-esque powers. I can't say I fully understand what was going on, but I don't really think that matters. The use of spirit energy by these lower level goons would have taken away from the dramatic dynamic between the former and current spirit detectives, and crafting a more gripping narrative was of higher importance than fleshing out the ethereal energy. However, Togashi came to terms with the fact that energy was an unclear mess upon entering the Three Kings saga, and committed the cardinal sin of battle anime, introducing power levels. A true crime against creative writing, formally defining a character's strength with a single value takes away from all of their unique intrigue in both training and fights in a last-ditch effort to make a series feel more planned out than it actually is. As soon as a fighter is boiled down to a number, it feels as though every fight they're in loses all significance, as the larger counter will always win. Sure, characters often awaken greater potential in the midst of a fight, but what does that have to do other than increase their arbitrary number? All new techniques, fighting styles, and preemptive plans feel pointless in the face of the almighty power level. And soon after writing himself into a corner with this, Togashi ended his flagship series. Yu Yu Hakusho is most fondly remembered for its Dark Tournament saga, in large part because of the extraordinarily unique cast of characters with never-before-seen powers, voiced in English by a diverse, multinational crew. Setting aside the lack of any formal definition as to why characters may manifest their unique powers, the arc shows how entertaining energy can be when wielded by users of different backgrounds and goals. The Toguro brothers are part of some of the most entertaining fights of shonen history, not because they have their oh-so-sacred number, but because their abilities reflect their true selves, therefore allowing physical altercations to reveal some aspect of their inner character without needing a word of dialogue. Though in classic shonen fashion, this did still happen. A lot. It was within this iota of success that Hunter x Hunter's Nen found its core, and Togashi's willingness to learn from his mistakes and improve his future work bolstered its appeal 1,000-fold. Nen seemingly took every likable aspect of energy, condensed it down to an explainable, palatable form, broke itself up into quantifiable abilities, and added a natural element of affinity to better reinforce the idea of abilities reflecting the inner self. Both systems grant powers that all individuals have the potential of wielding, yet are ordinarily unaware of because of a high-ranking organization keeping it secret. Many of the base abilities are shared, yet defined much more eloquently with Nen. Heightened spiritual awareness became Gyo, the spirit wave in all of its variants became Ko, and the wide variety of different powers across different fighters became the lauded Hatsu chart. And this is where the system truly shines. Just after the idea of Hatsu affinities were introduced, Hisoka went into extensive detail about how to guess a person's Nen type according to their personality, and this small aside became a somewhat unbreakable rule for all Nen users. Though at first glance this may seem restrictive, the 6 different, very vague outlines for personalities can be used to define nearly every real-life individual, and the corresponding definitions of each Nen type are equally as nebulous. The stated potential to still manifest abilities of a non-affinity Nen type means nobody is ever restricted to a single Hatsu, and this is naturally balanced by a reduction of max potential in those powers. And just to top it all off, specialization is literally a anything I think of that doesn't fit into the other 5 categories option, which Togashi wrote in for himself and chose to make liberal use of through various top-tier villains throughout Hunter x Hunter. With everything put together, the potential for fights to be reduced to a simple slugfest is reduced to nearly 0, as each fighter has a win condition unique to them, which must be quickly assessed and ascertained by their opponents in order for them to win. In this way, fights are guaranteed to have more moving parts, higher stakes at every moment, and an arguably larger natural engagement factor. The need for power levels is not only eliminated, but the addition of such would actively work to counteract the carefully crafted intricacies of Togashi's sculpted masterpiece. This fact is something touched on directly in the Chimera Ants arc, as Killua discusses his methodology for choosing his fights and is forced to overcome his regressive view of power in favor of recognizing his and Gon's maximum potential. It even feels possible to work backwards and retroactively assign Nen types to Yu Hakusho characters, showing the show's massive influence in their spiritual successor of a series. Yusuke's spirit gun is quintessentially a mission, Kuwabara's sword feels more conjurer than anything, Toguro Younger is enhancer, Hiei is transmuter, and Kurama is manipulator. Sensui's sacred energy may even classify as a specialist Hatsu if you stretch the meaning enough. Though regretfully underexplored in Yu Hakusho, energy's biggest shortcomings were flipped to become Nen's greatest assets, leading greatly to its wide appeal today. With all this being true, fights in Hunter x Hunter are automatically more entertaining. However, there was another significant change between the series that additionally contributed to my believing this to be the case. Though the power systems between these two series may share significant, clear similarities, the treatment and consequences of death share almost none. This is an unfair comparison, I hear you saying, and I completely see where you're coming from. Yu Yu Hakusho is based around a spirit detective who obtained his powers out of random happenstance because of his untimely demise at age 14, and therefore spends a large amount of time in the waiting room of the dead. Within the first 5 episodes, Yusuke dies and is revived, so of course, death is treated completely differently. Yeah, I wasn't arguing against that. In this section, I only hope to explain why Hunter x Hunter's very different handling of death stands diametrically opposed to Yu Yu Hakusho's in its ability to make consequences feel both more legitimate and captivating. Yusuke's death is the quintessential inciting incident that drove Yu Yu Hakusho forward in its earliest moments. After dying, Yusuke had to undergo 5 straight episodes of arduous tasks to prove his ability and deservedness of rebirth, only to thereafter be required to become the poster child for the spirit world within the living realm. Obviously, doing something like this slightly trivializes death because it exposes the audience to the non-permanence of an ordinarily irreversible event. But I would say the arduous nature of the reversal, as well as its complete inability to happen to any other character from then on out, more or less negates any potential for it to weaken death as a plot device. For many reversals after it, however, the faults of Togashi's handling of the subject become abundantly apparent. Within the Dark Tournament saga, both Kuwabara and Genkai are presumed dead for a brief period of time. Both die in hopes of pushing Yusuke towards unlocking his full potential, and both get their wish by becoming driving forces behind our hero defeating Toguro Younger. For a show that seemed to follow every established shonen writing convention up until this point, pulling something like this was profound. Cutting the main cast of characters nearly in half would have let Togashi change the entire tone of his story, likely to something closer to what he desired to write. But he didn't follow through. Kuwabara's vitals had been missed, and Genkai was revived because Koenma pulled some strings in Spirit World. 2 protagonist deaths had been reversed, each by some incredibly roundabout method, so by the time Yusuke up and dies again in Chapter Black Saga, my reaction was much more muted than I'm imagining Togashi had hoped it would be. Yusuke's second revival marked the moment in time that I had fully checked out on the series' fight scenes. From that point on, and because of the fight to live or die nature of the show, all tensions of the fights was gone and replaced with a nagging desire to get on with it and have the plot move forward. It's for this reason that I believe Togashi was forced to write the Three Kings saga in such a way, to have our three remaining protagonists fight not for victory, but for some other purpose. But even then, it's hard to weave intrigue into a fight you know your self-insert will walk away from almost entirely unscathed. Thus, when the credits on the series roll and Hiei, Kurama, Genkai, Kuwabara, and Yusuke all walked into the sunset, it only felt expected. But unexpectedness is where Hunter x Hunter shines. Where Yu Hakusho draws a very distinct division between Team Urameshi and the demons they must fight, Hunter x Hunter chooses to blur any formal lines of good or bad. Evidenced by the fact that Hisoka can be a primary antagonist in one arc and a close ally in the next, there's no way to tell who the main cast's next opponent will be, nor who may become a potential ally. And this is an astoundingly important point. We follow the Hunter exam through the doings of a medical student, a grudge-wielding teen, and two 12-year-old boys. The four pit up against a wild cast, including a snake charmer, martial arts master, and a trained wild animal hunter. And when their clearly more qualified counterparts start dropping like flies, you as a viewer are both meant and primed to feel uneasy. As of yet, there has been no shown way to feign death and survive, so every encounter with an opponent potentially becomes a matter of life or death, and the universe around the characters acknowledge this. Whether it's Kurapika trying to reason with Hisoka during the exam to avoid having to fight the bloodthirsty savage, or the referee in Heaven's Arena liberally giving out points during the Gon vs Hisoka fight to make it end faster, death is always acknowledged as a possible outcome of a risky action. Though none of our four heroes die, they often find themselves making a deal with the devil or devil incarnate to buy themselves more time on our green earth. In helping to build a tonal throughline for the series, supporting allies like Squalla, Pockle, and Goto are oft for frankly insignificant reasons. Hell, the most powerful hunter we ever had the glory of meeting died in his last fight against Meruem, and an entire arc was built around finding his successor to the chairman position. Additionally, the one primary example of death reversal in Hunter x Hunter can mirror Yusuke's first passing in both tone and conditional requirements. Yusuke died at the moment Spirit World was actively searching for a spirit detective replacement, and his personality and qualifications just happened to fit the bill. Not only that, but he willingly went along with and passed multiple tests prior to revival, and was indebted to Koenma for the rest of his life thereafter. Kite died at the hands of a species known to allow reincarnation of its prey through their offspring, while wielding a random 1 of 9 weapons granted by his unexplored Nen ability. With all of these conditions met, he faced death head-on and was ready for any consequence, but miraculously survived. It is because of these requirements and the complete inability for them to be achieved hereafter that Kite's rebirth does not bastardize the consequences of death in his series. But even if it did, the more than 110 chapters and 7 years that the manga readers assumed he was dead would have been more than enough of a gap for demise to still feel permanent. All of this is to say, death is liberally used as a powerful plot device in both series in order to create a unique aura of risk and tension where necessary. However, Yu Yu Hakusho's willingness and seeming requirement to backtrack on major protagonist death completely reverses any of these vibes while diminishing the impact a true passing may have later on. Hunter x Hunter, on the other hand, revels in moments where characters are forced to reason or bargain their way out of tough encounters, and uses demise as the powerful force of nature it truly is. This approach to combat and confrontations, stacked on top of net abilities, make each and every fight incredibly entertaining. Though, do not mishear me when I say, there's one other writing practice that elevates Hunter x Hunter's writing from great to ascended. Yu Yu Hakusho is rife with Deus Ex Machina. All who watch the series remember the climax of the chapter Black Saga, when Yusuke is revived because of the actions of his demon genes from 40 generations prior, miraculously unlocking strength rivaling Ryzen himself. Just remembering that moment makes me physically repulsed, as the event single-handedly makes what would have been the best arc in the series drop multiple places on my personal saga tier list. It is far and away the most memorable moment of Deus Ex Machina, but you should not be surprised to hear it is not the only one. Not only that, but is perhaps the least impactful on my overall opinion of the show. Back all the way in episode 11, Yusuke was seated in Genkai's tournament to fight Kazemaru, a ninja with mastery of spirit-seeking attacks. Yusuke, exhausted from his battle only a few minutes prior, seemed to be in an unwinnable situation. Having realized the only way to beat his opponent would be in a kamikaze attack, Yusuke trips and falls into a pond at the perfect moment to win him a complete victory on complete accident. Out of seemingly nowhere, Togashi showed in one fell swoop that he was willing and primed to allow his protagonist to win even if it shatters logic and reason. And then 2 episodes later, he does it again. After escaping Rando's grasp by falling into a lake and swimming through the swamp, Yusuke pops up behind the demon and uses the last of his spirit energy in a spirit blast that misses its mark. Losing all of his strength from the shot, Yusuke endures a barrage of punches, getting knocked unconscious and put at the mercy of any incantation Rando may choose to chant. However, as soon as Rando starts to utter the spell to shrink Yusuke so that he may break all his bones as he did with Kuwabara, Rando begins to unexpectedly shrink instead. When it is revealed that Yusuke had algae stuck in his ears, and because he couldn't hear the spell it fired back into the user, I audibly groaned. Deus Ex Machina, according to Robert McKee in his book Story, not only erases all meaning and emotion, it's an insult to the audience because it is a lie. Using it once ruins a moment that could have otherwise been made much more impactful by thoughtful and delicate story writing, but using it incessantly eliminates the appeal of your story altogether. If you wish to write a story where your main character is the underdog who has slim to none chances to win in every fight, you must make every single win feel deserved and be willing to have them lose for the sake of good writing. And for the third time, I'll say some variant of it in this video, Hunter x Hunter does just that. One of the most shocking things Hunter x Hunter brings to the table is its willingness to allow its MCs to taste complete and utter defeat, forcing them to reassemble their oftentimes shattered egos and scramble to find meaning or growth in the depths of despair. When Gon, Killua, and Kite are clearly outmatched against Pito, Gon and Killua are forced to run away while Kite sacrifices himself to buy the two kids time. When Gon sees with his own two eyes the mangled, marionetted corpse of his former teacher, the raw emotions that he feels drive his behavior for every remaining episode he spends in NGL. Because no god of the machine came to his rescue at that moment in time, he becomes obsessed with being able to condense and summon unprecedented amounts of power regardless of risk, leading to two of the most jaw-dropping scenes in the show, being his faux fight against Moral and his last fight against Pito. There was a faint glimmer of this in the very end of Yu Yu Hakusho. Yusuke loses the Demon World Tournament, therefore relinquishing any biological claim he may have had to a kingdom over to Enkai at the end of the arc. However, it was just a faint glimmer because, as said earlier, all of our protagonists may have lost their battles but achieved victory in some other form. Be it coming to terms with their suffering, defining their true self, or accepting their ancestry. All three of our protagonists won in some form or another. The multiple times that MCs lose in Hunter x Hunter mark some of the lowest points tonally. Killua's loss in the Hunter exam is a defeat that follows him for a full calendar year, limiting his freedom of travel compared to Gon, and being a painful reminder that irrespective of his distance from Kukuru Mountain, his older brother Illumi will always have unwavering control over him. Sure, such an event allowed him to summon the power to remove the manipulation needles lodged deep inside his brain when he was encountering a Nen-wielding Rammet, but for the 6 years and 103 chapters in between, Killua's character sat festering with the stench of defeat, clouding his actions and decisions from then on. By eliminating Deus Ex Machina and establishing that his protagonist can lose, both while propping up a power system and fighting style that encourage intricately planned battles, Togashi produced his desired outcome. Satisfying surprise. Surprise resultant from Deus Ex Machina is like a spit in the face for all those who find themselves immersed in a fantasy world, as it will always neglect established plot threads and underlying themes in favor of spontaneity. However, surprise resultant from masterfully paced and thoroughly planned writing can produce some of the greatest, best remembered fictional stories of all time. It can produce Hunter x Hunter. It's clear Togashi sought to make something incredible with Hunter x Hunter. In doing so, he took a measured, calculated look at his weaknesses and made incredible strides to go above and beyond where he had fallen short previously. Yu Yu Hakusho may have come apart in a significant number of places, but Hunter x Hunter has, frankly, never repeated a mistake. Even with this being true, there is one major change that may have not been for the better. Yu Yu Hakusho's ending is abrupt. Some things are left unexplained, and some parts feel rushed beyond belief. New characters are completely underdeveloped, and the labyrinthian story of Yusuke Urameshi ends not with a bang, but with a whimper, at age 18, engaged to Keiko. But at least there was an ending. If you're anything like me, you finished watching Hunter x Hunter and immediately jumped to reading the subsequent chapters of the manga after hearing that not all canon material had yet been animated. You were shocked to see Jing take a primary role for a brief stint, in complete awe of the fight that was Hisoka vs. Chrollo, and hopeful for a new, massive plot of the Succession contest. And if you were a lot like me, you would have finished reading all 50 of the new chapters around December of 2018. Now, looking at the hiatus chart for the Hunter x Hunter manga, can you see where I'm going? Yu Yu Hakusho's unsatisfactory ending was something Togashi took note of and is something that he would never do again. However, for all its faults, at least the series concluded. Both Togashi and the viewer were able to move on with their lives in only a few episodes instead of waiting around for years at a time for infrequent batches of 10 short chapters. Some may say this is one of the few ways Yu Yu Hakusho is better than Hunter x Hunter, knowing when to call it quits, Sure, looking at Gon and Killua's continuity, their stories have concluded and provided a pseudo-bookend for the most significant characters of the series, but Togashi clearly feels an incessant compulsion to leave every person satisfied when finally walking away from his magnum opus. He's willing to bring back characters like Leorio, who had blatantly done all they sought to do in their time as a hunter, just to help Kurapika reach his finish line. And while this is admirable to an extent, it's also somewhat torturous for a lover of the series who's had to sit through a year and some of this. That being said, there's a chance Togashi's reluctance to end the series may mean that he really does have a final goal in mind. Granted, Luffy will probably reach Laugh Tale before Kurapika gets his last eyes, but I would say the odds of both happening are about the same. So maybe this year we will get a chapter, and when we do, we'll have known that Togashi chose to go beyond. Plus, Ultra.